Chapter 18. Ambushed. According to Malvoden, the uncontested leader of the Validians, the group's roots could be traced back to the time of the split, when the mages ripped the elemental stones from the planet's core, entrusting them to their guardians. They also created a secret society that would always be loyal to those who wielded the stone's power. With allegiance to no specific nation or ruler, the Validians were a fighting force to be called on by the Stonebearers in times of great need, or when discretion was advised.
"So you see," continued Malvoden, "we are yours to command, my lord. We are many, and we are strong. Those you see before you are merely a small representation of our group. Most of our members are hidden, their identities kept safe by our code of silence. Our agents have infiltrated every nation of Alnorda, each of them sworn to serve the Master of the Stones."
The man's intensity never seemed to waver. "The Masters, you mean?" Jaden interjected.
"My lord?"
"You serve all the Masters of the Stones, as commanded by Alamon on the very day the split was created. That is what you claimed."
"Of course, my lord," Malvoden conceded. "However, the other bearers of the stones are inaccessible."
He said it as if a gross atrocity had been committed against him personally. There was little doubt from the fanatical look in his eyes that Malvoden coveted the stones, though what he would do with them without the ability to call on their power, Jaden had no idea.
"You, my lord, are the only known wielder of a great stone of power. The Validians have served your family for generations, and now we will serve you as the time of the return draws near."
He stepped forward and knelt, bowing his head in a gesture of supplication that seemed extremely forced.
"It was prophesied that one day we would be called upon to lead mankind back into the bountiful south beneath the flag of a powerful stone wielder. The signs are evident for those who choose to see that the time for our greatest service, the reason for our very being, is at hand. We believe that you are the one who will vanquish the demons forever and lead us back into the land of man's creation. You, Jaden Ryanthorn, will be the king of Iriania, the world that is whole. And we, the Validians, will be the first people of the New South."
"And who will you be, Malvoden?"
"Your humble servant."
Jaden was too stunned by the man's outrageous proclamations to even laugh. The strange priest's persistent fervor was beginning to grow tiresome. As much as he claimed that his organization's sole purpose was to support the Masters of the Stones, Jaden had a feeling that his true motives were all his own. With so much new information to process already, he wanted nothing more than to be away from this madman, where he could think. "I have a sudden longing for fresh air," he announced to the assembly. "Please excuse me." Malvoden said nothing, but he could feel the man's eyes on him all the way to the door. As soon as he was outside, he leaned against the temple wall and took a deep breath. "My own private army with hidden members in every nation, and the immortality to rule forever." The power was almost unfathomable. He had a hard time imagining his father involved with the likes of Malvoden, but then maybe his father had not held with the man's ideas. Just because he had a memory of his father with Malvoden in the temple did not mean that Urian consorted with him. It was more likely that he had paid the leader of the Validians a visit to keep him in check. Still, if things went badly for them in Eridan, he would have to seriously consider any offer of help, even if it felt like there must be invisible strings attached. The sky was dark now, and he had an early morning ahead. The best course of action, he decided, was to tell Malvoden that he would keep the Validians on his mind, but that he was not yet ready to commit to the goal of retaking Sidion. The notion would have seemed absurd to say the least if it were not for Spurion's talk of the split weakening. What would Malvoden say if he knew about that? Does he know? Now that was a frightening thought indeed. As he reached for the door to inform the group of his position and bid them farewell, the thin hairs on the back of his neck began to stand up. He sensed a familiar presence that he had not felt since one night in his bedchamber. The assassin was back. He spun, expecting an attack. The street was empty. Street lamps lit the front of the museum and the temple, spilling yellowish pools of light onto the cobblestones at regular intervals down Palador Street, but they did little to dispel the deep shadows in between. A cool wind had picked up, whistling sporadically through the buildings and rustling his tattered cloak. The same entity who had tried to kill him before was out there somewhere. He knew it.
"Who's there?" he shouted. "Show yourself!"
Could it be his imagination? No. He knew the other was there the way he used to know when his father was near. There was something about the assassin that gave him a similar feeling, yet there was no question that this was his enemy. Still, the similarities were startling. What was it about his would-be killer that felt so familiar? It was almost palpable, like a scent, and it smelled like power. There was a moment of shock as he realized that his attacker was no longer simply near him, but inside his head. He could feel the surprise of the other almost as sharp as his own, like their minds had become one for a moment. Then he felt only pain. His knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. He tried to scream, but sound would not come. It was as though the very fibers of his mind were swelling from the force of the other's wrath. He attempted to break through the mental hold, thinking it was some trick like Crysin had used, but this was more real, solid. This was no illusion. He fought for his sanity, for his life. Straining against the assassin's will, he pushed back with he knew not what. It was like trying to move a brick wall. Sweat broke out on his forehead. He could feel the other's malice, the excitement of a sadistic predator watching its prey squirm as it died. But below that, a contradicting sense of desperation and insecurity. Then all thoughts fled, as his own will gave out, and his mind began to be crushed as surely and methodically as an offending bug beneath the heel of a boot. All that was left was the sickening realization that he was going to die. The creak of the temple door was distant, muted like sound traveling through water. He realized that his eyes were closed. Releasing all tension, he let them open for one last look at the world. Malvoden was there, shock evident on his broad face. Beyond the stout Validian, he saw the silhouette of someone outlined against the night sky, standing 3 stories up on the roof of the museum. The warrior priest followed his gaze.
"Kill it!"
He dully heard Malvoden scream as the leader of the Validians pulled a dagger from beneath his robe. The blade whizzed through the air, narrowly missing the figure on the rooftop, who dove face first onto the tiles to avoid the deadly projectile. Jaden felt the hold on his mind slip, his senses returning in a flood. The assassin was still inside of him, desperation now his prevalent emotion. Gathering himself, Jaden used the moment to push forth with everything he had left inside. The struggle resumed in his head until suddenly, like a cork being shot from a bottle, the invading presence was forced out. His thoughts were his own again, as he lay breathing heavy on the pavestones. Anger radiated from the stranger in waves, crashing over him like a physical force, but he was determined to maintain sole possession of his mind. Steeling himself against the other's will, he repelled every fresh attempt to gain entry. Harder and harder the other pried, until Jaden had to grit his teeth with the effort of holding him at bay. Gradually, the attacks grew weaker. He could feel the assassin's frustration through the anger, and he realized with relief that he could not be violated in the same manner again. Then, without warning, the very pavestones exploded upward below him, hurtling him through the air to slam into the wall of the temple. Something was decidedly wrong with the world. There was nothing strange about bells ringing, but at some point they were supposed to stop. His limbs were misbehaving as well. He tried to reach up and clean his ear out, but his hand flopped erratically and fell back to the ground. A big man in robes stood before him, his mouth moving frantically. Apparently he was unable to shout above the bells. There were other robed men running around too. They looked like clerics, but they couldn't be because they all carried weapons. The big man was not going away. Whatever he wanted, he was going to continue shouting until he got it. Jaden opened his mouth to tell him to speak up, but was overcome by a coughing fit. He looked down to see blood covering the front of him, dripping from his chin. How had that happened? The next thing he knew, the big man was scooping him up in his arms, and they were moving. The fellow was very strong, cradling him against his chest like a little baby. Jaden looked around to make sure that no one was watching. He was a prince, after all, and it would be rather embarrassing to be seen this way. Luckily, the streets were mostly empty. It was an odd town they passed through, with stone buildings all the same shades of gray. Lights and sounds streamed out of the occasional window, rousing the adventurer in him. He wanted to explore every one. Perhaps there was even a candy shop. Finally, they came to a large square surrounded by bright lights. A group of men was gathered on the steps of a little castle. His arrival caused quite a stir among them. An enormous man, at least as big as the man carrying him, stepped forward and took him away. Jaden was surprised to see that the giant man was crying. Crying! He could not remember the last time he had cried. Come to think of it, he could not remember much of anything. Another man in black robes, with a short dark beard, was yelling at the robed man who had been carrying him. Why do so many men in this place wear robes? He wondered. He found that if he concentrated very hard, he could just hear what they were saying over the bells.
"I should have you clamped in irons right now,"
shouted the bearded man.
"If he dies, then we lose as much as you, Great One,"
interrupted the man in brown robes. A low growl erupted from the mountain of a man who held him now.
"Leave now,"
he said in a voice that was not at all friendly.
"Leave now, or I swear there will be nothing left of you to put in a cell." "As you wish, Dragon Slayer, but he will seek us out soon. I promise you." Then they were moving again. Through the little castle and up a spiral staircase they went in a hurry. They raced across a little parapet, up still more stairs, to a room with an enormous bed. The huge fellow laid him down gently. It was about time. He did not wish to be carried any further. "I am not a baby!" The bearded man had followed, and there was another man with spectacles and a much bigger, bushy beard waiting. The two bearded men spoke briefly, too low for him to hear with the bells still ringing. Somebody needed to fix those bells. And then they stood directly over him. He tried to ask what they were doing, but could only mumble and spit up more blood. The strange men laid their hands on his forehead, and consciousness left him. He woke in a cold sweat, a metallic taste in his mouth. The dim, gray light streaming through the balcony window, only slightly overpowering the low-burning lamps, told him that it was time. Dawn was upon him, and today was the day that he would lead his troops to retake Eridan. The burning in his side was the first indication that all was not right. Then the events of the previous night came crashing into clarity. He looked over to see Spurion and Eckenroy quietly watching him, neither of them appearing as if they had slept. "I was attacked," he told them. Eckenroy was clenching his fists, his knuckles white. "It wasn't the first time," he added. Now was not the time for secrets, he knew. Somebody wanted him dead, and they had extraordinary means of accomplishing that goal. "It happened the other night as well, here in my room." The two men were silent. Were they listening to him? Someone was trying to kill him. "We should get moving," he said, eager to put action to his words. "We need to cover as much ground as possible if we... The pain was in his back. Eckenroy was at his side in an instant, holding him gently down on the bed. "You cannot, Your Highness."
The big man looked haunted. Jaden had always thought of Eckenroy as an unwavering pillar of strength. To see him in such a state did not bode well. "How bad is it?"
"I am afraid that you will not be going with us, Your Highness."
Jaden did not know how to respond. Not going? That was unacceptable. He started to argue, but Spurion did not give him a chance.
"Your back is broken, and your rib has pierced your lung. I am sorry. We did all that we could in our weakened condition."
"What are you saying? Am I going to die?" The look in Spurion's eyes told him everything he needed to know.
"Your lung is filling with blood. The bone shard is blocking the hole, slowing the process, but the outcome is inevitable."
Jaden tried to steady his breathing. Why had he been so careless, running off on his own when he knew that someone in the city wanted him dead? It did not matter now, he supposed. If this was the end, then he was determined not to go down without a fight. Too many people still suffered the effects of Grislin's horrible illusion. Their lives depended on him. If he could save even one, it would be worth the effort. Before he died, he would save as many as he could. "Then we must hurry," he said with more confidence than he felt. "Bring me a litter." The wizard and the general shared an astonished look.
"You cannot be moved, Jaden. If you are jostled too badly, the wound could open and—"
"And what? Kill me?" Eckenroy lowered his head, unable to look him in the eyes for the first time in his life. "I do not fear death. I have looked it in the face many times since last we met, my friend. What I fear is meeting the great thoughts, knowing that I could have saved more people, and yet did nothing but waste away in this room. When I see my mother and father again, do you think I could look them in the eye?" Eckenroy did not answer. "How long do I have?"
"It is difficult to judge. A few days. A week. We have sent riders to the other nations seeking the services of a mender. Even if someone arrives in time, the injury is so severe that any but the greatest of them will do more harm than good. There is no one in Rose or North Calas that I know of who can help you. I have heard of a man in Irnor who serves the Iron Council, but the Irnori have no love for Crysin. Perhaps in the far east there is someone, but the distance is too great. The menders at the university in Aridon would have been our best chance, but the city is under Merc's control. For all we know, the university was destroyed, and everyone there is under the spell."
"Then I suggest we get started. I want more search parties sent out. I want them to gather every refugee they can find and bring them to me as we march toward Aridon. Every one I save is one more small victory over the betrayer." Now that he had the bit in his mouth, there was no turning back. He would not lie here and die in vain, and he would not give himself time to wallow in self-pity. He would not. There were more lives at stake than his own. "Is that acceptable, General?" Eckenroy clenched his jaw, holding back tears.
"You are your father's son.